Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the crowded halls of Nexus 7. The space station smelled like old metal and unwashed bodies. He had just finished unloading his cargo ship and needed to find a place to eat. Before his next job, his stomach growled loudly as he passed by different shops and bars. The station was not a nice place. It sat at the edge of known space where no government had control. Pirates, smugglers, and worse people came here to do business. Jake knew he should not stay long, but he needed the money from working these dangerous routes. As he turned a corner, he heard loud voices coming from a large room. The door was slightly open, and he could see bright lights inside. His curiosity got the better of him, and he moved closer to look. What he saw made his blood run cold. It was an auction, but they were not selling goods or equipment. No, they were selling people. Living beings from different planets stood on a raised platform, while a fat alien with 4 arms called out prices. The crowd shouted numbers back at him. Jake had heard about slave auctions, but had never seen one. His hands shook as he watched. He knew he should leave right away, but something kept him there. Maybe it was the look of hopelessness on the faces of those being sold. The auctioneer, a Blorvian with greasy purple skin, grabbed the next person to be sold. Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was a female alien, unlike any he had ever seen. She had smooth scales that changed color in the light, going from green to blue to silver. Her face was proud and beautiful, with large golden eyes that seemed to hold old wisdom. But something was wrong with her. Most of her kind had 4 arms. Jake could tell from the way her body was shaped. This one only had 3. Her lower left arm was missing, and he could see old scars where it should have been. Her remaining arms were chained behind her back. "Here, we have a Zephyrian female," the auctioneer announced. "Look at these royal blood. Look at these markings." He pointed to golden patterns on her scales that were barely visible under the dirt and grime. "But as you can see, she is damaged goods, missing a limb and not much use for heavy work." The crowd laughed and made cruel jokes. Jake felt sick listening to them. The alien female stood straight and tall despite her chains. She did not beg or cry like some of the others had. There was something noble about the way she carried herself. "We will start the bidding at 50 credits, the auctioneer said. "Come now, surely someone can use a royal pet, even a broken one." Jake looked around the room. Most people were not even paying attention anymore. A few raised their hands without much interest. The price slowly went up to 75 credits. Then 80. It was less money than Jake spent on fuel for his ship each week. He found himself studying the alien female more closely. Her golden eyes swept across the crowd, and for a moment they met his. He saw no fear there, only a quiet dignity that made him feel ashamed for just watching. 85 credits, someone called out. "I can use her in my kitchen," said another voice. "She can scrub floors with those 3 arms." Jake's hands made fists at his sides. These people were talking about her like she was a broken tool. He thought about his own sister back on Earth, who had lost her leg in an accident. She was still the same person, still smart and funny and kind. This alien deserved better than being someone's slave. "Going once at 90 credits, the auctioneer said, sounding bored. Without thinking, Jake raised his hand. 200 credits, he called out. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to look at him. The auctioneer's 4 eyes widened with surprise. "Did you say 200, human?" Jake's heart was beating fast. 200 credits was all the bonus money he had earned from his last 3 jobs. It was supposed to pay for repairs on his ship and food for the next month, but he could not stop himself now. "Yes, 200 credits, he said again, louder this time. The alien female was staring at him now. Her golden eyes were wide with confusion. She tilted her head to one side like she was trying to figure out why a human would bid on her. "Well, well," the auctioneer said with a greedy smile. 200 credits from the human. "Do I hear 250? The room stayed quiet. No one else wanted to pay that much for a damaged slave. Jake held his breath and waited. Going once, going twice, sold to the human for 200 credits. Jake's legs felt weak. What had he just done? He did not know anything about taking care of an alien, He did not even know what her kind ate. But it was too late now. A guard pushed through the crowd toward him. "Pay up, human," the guard said. "Cash only." Jake pulled out his credit chip and transferred the money. His entire savings account was now empty. The guard handed him a small device. "This controls her chains," the guard explained. "Press the red button to shock her if she tries to run. Press the blue button to release the chains." "Dort!" Jake took the device but did not like holding it. It felt wrong to have so much control over another person's freedom. The guard brought the alien female over to him. Up close, Jake could see that she was taller than he was, maybe 7 feet. Her scales were dull from poor treatment, but he could still see hints of their natural beauty. The scars on her missing arm looked old but painful. "Congratulations on your purchase," the auctioneer called out. "Next item up for bidding is this fine Regelian male." Jake did not stay to watch. He walked toward the exit, and the alien female followed him. Her chains made soft clinking sounds as she moved. People stared at them as they passed, but Jake kept his eyes forward. Once they were outside the auction room, Jake stopped. He looked around to make sure no one was watching them, then pressed the blue button on the control device. The chains fell away from the alien's arms with a loud crash. She stared at him in shock, rubbing her wrists where the chains had been. "Why did you do that?" she asked. Her voice was musical, with an accent he had never heard before. "Chains are wrong," Jake said simply. "No one should be owned by someone else." She continued to stare at him. "But you bought me. I belong to you now." Jake shook his head. "No, you belong to yourself. I just paid for your freedom." The alien female's golden eyes filled with tears. She sank down to sit on the floor, her 3 remaining arms wrapped around her knees. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Humans are supposed to be simple creatures. Why would you spend your money to help a stranger?" Jake sat down beside her, because it was the right thing to do. "What is your name?" she looked at him for. Long moment before answering, "I am Veltar Cathus, daughter of the Zephyrian royal house." Her voice was proud, but also sad, though I suppose that means nothing now. "It means something to me," Jake said. "I am Jake Morrison, and I am going to help you get home." Jake's cargo ship was not built for passengers. It had 1 small bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living area that was mostly filled with tools and spare parts. When they arrived at the ship, Veltar stood in the doorway looking around with her golden eyes. "You can have the bedroom," Jake said, moving some boxes out of the way. "I usually sleep on the couch anyway." Veltar shook her head. "I cannot take your bed. You've already done too much." "Please," Jake said. "You need rest more than I do. Besides, the couch is more comfortable than it looks." She agreed after Jake insisted several more times. He showed her where the bathroom was and how to work the shower. The ship's computer could make basic food from different planets, so she would not go hungry. "How long will it take to reach Zephyrian space?" she asked. Jake checked his navigation computer. "About 3 weeks, maybe a little more. Is that okay?" Veltar nodded. "That is fine. I have waited this long to go home." For the first few days, they did not talk much. Veltar stayed in the bedroom most of the time. Jake could hear her moving around, but she was very quiet. He left food outside her door and tried to give her space. On the 4th day, Jake was fixing a broken sensor in the engine room when he heard a loud crash. He ran to the kitchen and found Veltar on the floor. A plate of food was scattered around her, and she was trying to clean it up with her 3 arms. "Are you hurt?" Jake asked, kneeling down to help. "I am fine," she said quickly, but he could see tears in her eyes. "I was trying to carry the plate and a cup at the same time. I forgot that I only have 3 arms now."
Ow.
Jake helped her clean up the mess. "How long have you been missing your arm?" Veltar was quiet for a long time. "I was born this way," she finally said. "Most Zephyrians have 4 arms, and I was born with only 3. The doctor said it was a genetic problem they tried to fix. It with surgery, but it did not work." "It must have been hard growing up," Jake said. She laughed, but there was no happiness in the sound. "Hard is a gentle word for it. In Zephyrian culture, physical perfection is very important. We believe that strong bodies make strong leaders. A princess who cannot even carry a plate properly is not fit to rule." Jake sat down at the small table. Is that why you were not on your home planet when you were captured? Veltar sat across from him. I was traveling with a diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim. My father thought that maybe I could be useful in negotiations, since I would never be queen anyway. Our ship was attacked by raiders. Everyone else was killed. I was kept alive because Royal Zephyrians can be sold for good money. I'm sorry, Jake said. That sounds terrible. The funny thing is, Veltar continued, I was actually good at the diplomatic work. I could see problems that others missed. But my family never cared about that. They only saw what I could not do, not what I could do. Over the next few days, Veltar began spending more time outside the bedroom. She would sit in the living area and watch Jake work on his ship repairs. She asked many questions about human technology and seemed surprised by how different it was from Zephyrian methods. Your people build things very differently, she observed as Jake fixed a power coupling. Zephyrian technology is designed to be perfect from the start. If something breaks, we usually replace the whole system. Humans like to fix things, Jake said. We figure out ways to make broken stuff work again. Sometimes the fix is even better than the original. Veltar watched him connect several different colored wires. That solution would not be accepted. On my world, it is not elegant enough. But does it work? Jake asked. Yes, it works very well. Then it is good enough for me. As the days passed, Jake noticed that Veltar struggled with many simple tasks. Opening containers designed for 4 hands was almost impossible for her. She had trouble carrying multiple items at once. Even eating was difficult because Zephyrian utensils were made for beings with 4 arms. Jake began making small changes. To help her, he adjusted the height of shelves so she could reach them easier. He found containers with easier lids, even carved new handles for some of her eating utensils. You do not have to do these things for me, Veltar, said one evening as Jake finished making a special cup holder for her. I want to help, Jake said. Besides, solving problems is fun for me. Humans are very strange, she said, but she was smiling. Most species see a problem and try to avoid it. Humans see a problem and think it is interesting. Maybe that is why we get along so well with our machines, Jake laughed. Everything is always breaking, so we always have something to fix. One night, Jake woke up to hear strange sounds coming from the bedroom. It sounded like Veltar was crying. He knocked softly on the door. Are you okay? He asked. I am fine, came her voice, but it sounded shaky. Can I come in? After a moment, she said yes. Jake opened the door and found Veltar sitting on the bed, holding a small device in her hands. It was glowing with soft blue light. What is that? Jake asked. A communication device, she said. I have been listening to news from my home world. My younger brother has taken the throne. He announced that I am dead. Jake sat down in the chair by the bed. Are you going to tell him you are alive? Veltar shook her head. What would be the point? I cannot challenge him for the crown. Law says that rulers must be physically perfect. Even if I return home, I will just be an embarrassment to the royal family. That seems like a stupid law, Jake said. It is tradition, Veltar replied. Zephyrians have followed these rules for thousands of years. Sometimes traditions need to change, Jake said, especially when they hurt good people. He talked for several more hours that night. Veltar told Jake about her childhood, about being hidden away during important ceremonies because her missing arm was shameful. She talked about her love of learning and how she had studied the histories of many different worlds. Jake told her about Earth, about his family, and about his work. He explained how humans dealt with disabilities and how they believed that everyone had value, regardless of their physical condition. On Earth, we had a president who used a wheelchair, Jake said. One of our greatest scientists could barely move or speak because of a disease, but his mind was brilliant. We judge people by what they can do, not by what they cannot do. Listened to these stories with amazement. Your species is very different from mine, she said. As the weeks passed, their conversations grew longer and more comfortable. Veltar began helping Jake with ship maintenance, using her knowledge of technology to suggest improvements. Jake was impressed by how quickly she learned about human systems. You are very smart, he told her one day as she helped him recalibrate the navigation computer. Intelligence means nothing if you cannot use it, she replied sadly. No, that is not true, Jake said. Smart is smart, no matter how many arms you have. One evening, as they were eating dinner together, Veltar asked Jake a question that had been bothering her. Why did you really buy me at that auction? Please do not say. It was just because it was the right thing to do. There were other slaves there who needed help too. Jake thought about it for a moment. You reminded me of my sister, he said finally. She lost her leg in an accident when she was 20. For a while, she thought her life was over, but she learned to adapt. She became a teacher and helped other people with disabilities. When I saw you standing there with so much dignity, despite everything that had happened to you, I knew you were strong like her. Veltar was quiet for a long time. Your sister sounds like a remarkable person. She is, Jake said. And so are you. 2 days before they were scheduled to reach Zephyr in space, Jake made a decision. He'd been thinking about it for weeks, sketching designs and making calculations. It was time to start building his surprise for Veltar. Jake worked late into the night for the next 2 days. He used spare parts from his ship's repair kit and medical supplies from the emergency box. The work was difficult because he had to make everything very small and precise. His hands were tired and his eyes hurt from looking at tiny wires and circuits. Veltar noticed that Jake was acting strange. He would disappear into the engine room for hours and come out with grease on his clothes. When she asked what he was doing, he would just smile and say it was a surprise. I do not like surprises, Veltar said on the second day. In my experience, surprises are usually bad news. This one will be different, Jake promised. Trust me. On the morning they were supposed to arrive in Zephyr space, Jake finished his project. He had not slept all night, but he was excited. The device was small enough to fit in a box the size of his hand. It looked like a metal sleeve with thin wires and tiny lights along the edges. Jake found Veltar sitting in the living area, staring out the window at the stars. She looked nervous about going home. Are you ready? Jake asked, holding the box. Behind his back? Ready for what? She asked. For your surprise? Jake sat down next to her and placed the box on the table. I made something for you. Veltar looked at the box suspiciously. What is it? Open it and see. She carefully lifted the lid with her 3 hands. Inside was the metal device Jake had been working on. It was shaped like an arm from the elbow down, but it was made of shiny metal and had small blue lights that pulsed slowly. I do not understand, Veltar said, picking up the device. What is this? It is a prosthetic arm, Jake explained. A replacement for the one you lost. Well, the one you never had. Veltar almost dropped the device. A replacement. Arm? That is impossible. It is not impossible, Jake said. We use these on Earth all the time. This one is special, though. I designed it to work with Zephyrian biology. It will connect to your nervous system and respond to your thoughts just like a real arm. Veltar stared at the prosthetic with wide eyes. You built this for me? Yes. It took me 2 weeks to figure out how to make it work with your body. I had to study your medical scans from the ship's database and learn about Zephyrian anatomy, but I think it will work. Tears began rolling down Veltar's face. I cannot accept this. Why not? Jake asked, confused. Because it would be cheating. She said, in Zephyrian culture, using artificial parts to enhance your body is considered dishonest. It would be like lying about who you really are. Jake shook his head. This is not cheating. This is just giving you back what you should have had from the beginning. Everyone deserves to feel complete. But the law says that rulers must be naturally perfect, Veltar protested. The law is wrong, Jake said firmly. Perfect does not mean having 4 arms. Perfect means being the best person you can be with whatever you have. Veltar held the prosthetic in her hands, turning it over to look at all the tiny parts. How does it work? Jake moved closer to show her. See these small wires? They will connect to the nerve endings in your shoulder. The computer inside will learn your thought patterns and translate them into movements. After a few days of practice, it will feel like your own arm, and it will be as strong as a real arm. Stronger, Jake said with a smile. I had to make it durable enough to last for years. It can lift twice as much as a normal Zephyrian arm, and the joints will never get tired. Veltar was quiet for a long time, just staring at the prosthetic. Why would you do this for me? You barely know me. I know enough, Jake said. I know. You are kind and smart and brave. I know you have been treated unfairly your whole life because of something that was not your fault. And I know that with this arm, you could do anything you want to do. Even challenge my brother for the throne, Veltar asked quietly. Especially that. Veltar looked up at Jake with tears still in her eyes. Will you help me put it on? Jake nodded. We need to go to the medical bay. The connection process requires some minor surgery, but the ship's medical computer can do it automatically. They went to the small medical bay in the back of the ship. Jake helped Veltar lie down on the examination table while the computer scanned her shoulder and arm. The screen showed a detailed image of her bones and muscles. The computer says, "Your nerve endings are healthy," Jake reported. "The connection should work perfectly." The medical computer injected Veltar with a local anesthetic to numb her shoulder. Then it used tiny surgical tools to attach the prosthetic's connection points to her nerve endings. The whole process took about an hour. When it was finished, Jake helped Veltar sit up. The prosthetic arm was now attached to her shoulder, but it was not moving yet. I do not feel anything, Veltar said, looking worried. That is normal, Jake assured her. The computer needs to calibrate itself to your brain patterns. Try to think about moving your new arm. Veltar closed her eyes and concentrated. The prosthetic fingers began to twitch, and the whole hand moved, opening and closing like a real hand. It is working, she whispered in amazement. Try moving the whole arm, Jake suggested. Veltar thought about lifting her arm, and the prosthetic responded immediately. She moved it up and down, then side to side. The movements were smooth and natural. It's incredible, she said, flexing the artificial fingers. I can feel pressure when I touch things. How is that possible? The sensors in the fingertips send signals back to your brain, Jake explained. It is not exactly the same as real touch, but it is close. Veltar spent the next hour testing her new arm. She picked up objects, opened containers, and even managed to eat with 4 utensils at once. For the first time in her life, she could do everything that other Zephyrians could do. Jake, she said finally, I do not know how to thank you. Do not need to thank me, Jake replied. Just promise me you will use it to make your life better. Delta stood up and walked over to the mirror on the wall. She looked at herself with 4 arms for the first time ever. The prosthetic looked different from her other arms because it was made of metal, but it moved just like they did. I look like a real Zephyrian, she said softly. Always were a real Zephyrian, Jake corrected her. Now you just have the tools. To show everyone else. That evening, as they prepared to enter Zephyrian space, Veltar made a decision. She had been monitoring communications from her home planet during the journey, and she had learned some disturbing news. Jake, she said as they sat together for dinner, there is something I need to tell you about the situation on my home world. Is it my brother is not doing well as king? Same raiders who captured me have been attacking our outer colonies. They've destroyed 3 settlements in the past month, and my brother cannot stop them. Jake set down his fork. That sounds serious. It's very serious. Many of my people are starting to question his leadership. Some of the nobles have even suggested that the royal family should be replaced entirely. What does that mean for you? Veltar looked down at her new prosthetic arm. It means that maybe, just maybe, I have a chance to save my people, but I will need to challenge my brother directly. According to our laws, disputed succession must be settled by single combat. Can you win? Jake asked. Veltar smiled for the first time since Jake had known her. It was a confident smile, full of determination. With this arm and everything you have taught me about human problem solving, I think I can. But more importantly, I think I can be the leader my people need. Then let us go home, Jake said. You have a kingdom to save. As their ship approached the Zephyrian homeworld, both Jake and Veltar knew that their lives were about to change. Forever, the disabled princess who had been sold as a slave was ready to become a queen. The Zephyrian homeworld looked beautiful from space. It was covered in purple oceans and silver mountains that sparkled in the light of 3 suns. Jake had never seen anything like it. It is more beautiful than I remembered, Veltar said as they approached the planet. She was standing beside him, all 4 of her arms now, watching her homeworld grow larger in the window. "Are you nervous?" Jake asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "I have been gone for almost a year. Many people think I am dead, and I am about to challenge the king with an artificial arm that my people will call an abomination." Their ship was contacted by Zephyrian Space Control as soon as they entered orbit. "Unknown vessel. Identify yourself and state your business." Veltar took a deep breath and activated the communication system. "This is Princess Veltar Cathias, daughter of the late King Morthes, requesting permission to land at the royal port." There was a long silence, and a different voice came over the radio, sounding shocked. "Princess Veltar? But you are dead. The king held a funeral ceremony for you." "I am very much alive," Veltar replied calmly. "I am returning home with a human companion who saved my life. Request an immediate audience with King Zektar." "Please wait while we contact the palace," the voice said. It took 30 minutes before they received permission to land. During that time, Jake could see Veltar becoming more nervous. She kept flexing her prosthetic hand, testing its grip.
"Out."
"If they reject the arm?" she asked. "What if they say it makes me unfit to rule? And we will figure out another way," Jake said. "But I think you are underestimating your own people. Maybe they are ready for change." They landed at a spaceport near the royal palace. The port was made of the same silver stone as the mountains, and it gleamed in the sunlight. As soon as they stepped off the ship, they were surrounded by royal guards. The guards were tall and powerful, with 4 muscular arms and scales that were darker than Veltar-S. They carried energy weapons and war armor that looked very advanced. Their leader, a female with red markings on her face, stepped forward. "Princess Veltar," she said, bowing slightly. "I am Captain Nexara of the Royal Guard. The king has ordered me to escort you to the palace immediately." "Thank you, Captain," Veltar replied. "This is Jake Morrison, the human who rescued me. He comes under my protection." Captain Nexara looked at Jake with curiosity. "A human? We have heard stories about your kind, but few have ever visited our world." "I am honored to be here," Jake said politely. As they traveled to the palace in a flying vehicle, Jake got his first close look at Zephyrian society. The cities were built vertically, with tall spires connected by bridges. Everything was designed for beings with 4 arms, from the doorways to the transportation systems. The palace was enormous. Carved from a single piece of silver stone that rose high into the sky, inside, the halls were decorated with paintings and sculptures that showed the history of the Zephyrian people. Jake noticed that all the art depicted Zephyrians with 4 perfect arms. They were brought to a large throne room where King Zektar was waiting. Looked very much like Veltar. But his scales were darker and his build was more muscular. When he saw his sister, his expression changed from surprise to anger. "So you are alive," he said coldly. "Where have you been for the past year?" "I was captured by raiders and sold into slavery," Veltar replied, standing tall. "I would have died if not for the kindness of this human." Zektar's eyes moved to Jake, then back to his sister. "And now you return with alien technology attached to your body? Do you think this makes you whole?" "I think it makes me capable," Veltar said. "More capable than a king who cannot protect his own people from raiders." The room fell silent.
Several
Nobles who had been watching from the sides began whispering to each other. Jake could see that Veltar's words had hit their mark. "You dare question my leadership?" Zektar demanded, rising from his throne. "I dare to challenge it," Veltar replied. "Our people are dying while you sit in comfort. The outer colonies have been attacked repeatedly, and you have done nothing to stop it." "I've sent our best warriors," Zektar protested. "And they have failed because they are using old tactics against new threats," Veltar said. "The raiders adapt and change, but our military does not." An elderly noble stepped forward. Jake recognized him from Veltar's descriptions as Lord Kefthan, one of the most respected members of the court. "Princess Veltar," he said carefully, "while we are glad to see you alive, you must understand that your artificial arm changes. Things our laws clearly state that rulers must be naturally perfect. Then perhaps our laws need to change," Veltar said. "I have spent time with humans and learned about their ways. They judge their leaders by their actions, not by their bodies. Humans are primitive," Zektar scoffed. They know nothing about proper governance. Jake stepped forward. With respect, Your Majesty, humans have survived and thrived on dozens of worlds. We have learned to adapt to any situation. That is what makes us strong. No one asked for your opinion, alien, Zektar snapped. But I am asking for it, Veltar said firmly. Jake Morrison has shown me new ways of thinking about problems. Built this arm for me using nothing but spare parts and determination. That is the kind of innovation our people need. Lord Kefton looked thoughtful. The princess raises interesting points, which our traditional methods have indeed failed against these new raiders. Enough, Zektar declared. Veltar, you are my sister, and I am glad you are alive. Yeah. But you cannot. Challenge my rule with that artificial arm is an abomination that goes against everything we believe. Then let me prove its worth, Veltar said. I invoke the ancient right of succession challenge, single combat, as is our tradition. The room erupted in shocked voices. Jake had known this moment would come, but he still felt nervous. He had seen how strong Zektar looked, and he worried about Veltar's chances. You cannot be serious, Zektar said. You want to fight me? I've trained in combat my entire life, and I have learned to survive in ways you cannot imagine, Veltar replied. I accept that you are stronger than me, but strength alone does not make a good ruler. Lord Kefton stepped between them. If the princess truly wishes to invoke the right of succession challenge, then it must be honored. However, there is the matter of her artificial arm. Some may argue that it gives her an unfair advantage. Then let them argue, Veltar said. But Jake told me that this arm is not stronger than a natural one. It is simply a replacement for what I was born without. That is not entirely true, Jake said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The arm is actually about twice as strong as a natural Zephyrian arm. I made it that way so it would last longer. Veltar looked at him in surprise. Jake, why are you telling them this? Because I want this to be fair, Jake said. Your Majesty, if you are concerned about the advantage the prosthetic gives her, then perhaps the combat should test more than just physical strength. What do you suggest? Lord Kefton asked. Jake looked around the room, thinking quickly. Make it a test of both strength and strategy. It's a challenge that requires problem-solving as well as fighting ability. Zektar laughed harshly. Fine. If my sister wants to humiliate herself with alien tricks, let her. I agree to a combat challenge. That tests both strength and wit. When? Veltar asked. Tomorrow at dawn, Zektar declared. In the traditional arena, before the entire court, winner takes the throne. As they were escorted to guest quarters for the night, Jake could see that Veltar was nervous, but determined. Are you sure about this? He asked when they were alone. She admitted. But I know that I cannot let my people continue to suffer while my brother fails to protect them. Even if I lose, at least I will have tried. You will not lose, Jake said confidently. What if something your brother does not have? What is that? You have learned to think like a human, and humans never give up. That night, as Veltar prepared for the most important fight of her life, Jake helped her plan strategy. They worked together until the early morning, combining Zephyrian combat techniques with human tactics. By dawn, they were ready. The arena was packed with nobles and citizens who had come to witness the unprecedented challenge. As Veltar walked onto the fighting ground, Jake saw her stand tall and proud, all four arms ready for battle. The fate of an entire world would be decided in the next hour. The arena was carved from the same silver stone as the palace. It was shaped like a large bowl with seats rising up on all sides. Jake sat in the front row with the nobles, watching as Veltar and her brother entered from opposite sides. The combat. Rules were simple. It would face 3 challenges that tested different skills. First was a test of pure strength, lifting heavy stones. Second was a puzzle that required quick thinking. Third was actual combat with traditional weapons. Lord Kefton stood in the center of the arena to explain the rules. Whoever wins 2 out of 3 challenges will be declared the rightful ruler, he announced. Let the first test begin. For the strength test, both Veltar and Zektar had to lift a series of increasingly heavy stone blocks. Zektar was confident. Flexing his 4 muscular arms as he approached the first stone, He lifted the lightest block easily, then moved to the next heavier one. His movements were smooth and powerful. The crowd cheered as he completed the third and fourth stones without any trouble. Veltar approached her stones calmly. Jake could see her prosthetic arm gleaming in the sunlight. She lifted the first stone. With 2 arms, saving her strength, the second stone required 3 arms, and she used her prosthetic for extra support. When she reached the heaviest stone, one that Zektar had struggled with, Veltar did something unexpected. Instead of trying to lift it with brute force, she studied it carefully. Then she used her prosthetic arm to find the stone's balance point and lifted it more efficiently than her brother had. The princess wins the first challenge, Lord Kefthan announced. The crowd murmured in surprise. Zektar looked angry. She cheated. She used that artificial arm to help her. The arm is part of me now, Veltar replied. Just like your 4 natural arms are part of you. The second test was a puzzle box that had been used in royal challenges for centuries. It was made of metal and had dozens of sliding pieces that had to be arranged in the correct pattern. Most Zephyrians needed all 4 arms to solve it quickly. Zektar attacked the puzzle aggressively, trying to force the pieces into place. Movements were fast but not very organized. He solved about half of it before getting stuck. Veltar approached the puzzle differently. She had learned from watching Jake fix his ship that sometimes slow and careful was better than fast and sloppy. She studied the puzzle for a full minute. Before making her first move, her 3 natural arms worked together while her prosthetic arm held pieces in place. She solved the puzzle methodically, step by step. When the final piece clicked into place, she had beaten her brother's time by several minutes. The princess wins the second challenge, Lord Kefthan said. The succession is decided. No, Zektar shouted. I demand the third challenge. Combat. Veltar nodded. I accept. They were given traditional Zephyrian weapons, long staffs with curved blades on both ends. The weapons were designed for fighters with 4 arms, allowing for complex spinning, attacks, and defensive moves. Zektar was skilled with the weapon. He spun his staff in complex patterns, creating a barrier of spinning blades. His attacks were powerful and precise, exactly what Jake had expected from a trained warrior. But Veltar fought differently. She used the tactics that Jake had taught her, staying mobile and looking for openings. When Zektar committed to a big attack, she would dodge and strike at his weak points. Her prosthetic arm gave her an unexpected advantage. It did not get tired like her natural arms, so she could maintain her defense longer than Zektar expected. And because it was slightly stronger, her blocks and parries threw off his timing. The fight lasted almost 20 minutes. Both fighters were breathing hard and covered in sweat. But Veltar was adapting to her brother's style, while he was becoming frustrated with her unpredictable tactics. Finally, Zektar made a mistake. He put too much force into an overhead strike, leaving himself off balance. Veltar stepped to the side and used her prosthetic arm to trap his weapon, while her other arms put her blade to his throat. Do you yield? She asked. Zektar looked around the arena. The crowd was completely silent. Then he dropped his weapon. Yield, he said quietly. Long live Queen Veltar. The crowd erupted in cheers. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he watched Veltar raise her forearms in victory. She had done it. The disabled princess was now the queen, but the celebration did not last long. 3 days after Veltar's coronation, urgent news arrived. Raiders had attacked another colony world. This time they had taken prisoners. Queen Veltar called an emergency meeting of her war council. Jake was surprised when she asked him to attend.
Your Majesty,
said General Dekmer, the head of Dekmer. The military? We have sent our best troops to fight these raiders many times. They always seem to know our tactics before we arrive. That is because we keep using the same tactics, Veltar replied. We need new strategies. What do you suggest? Asked another general. Veltar looked at Jake. I've learned much from my human friend about different ways of fighting. Could you share your thoughts? Jake stood up nervously. He was not a military expert, but he had read about human military history during their journey. On Earth, he began, We learned that sometimes smaller, faster forces can defeat larger, stronger ones. Instead of sending big fleets that the raiders can see coming, why not use smaller ships that can strike quickly and escape? That sounds like cowardice, General Dekmer said dismissively. It sounds like intelligence, Queen Veltar corrected him. Continue, Jake. Also, Jake said, gaining confidence, the raiders seem to know your tactics because they have fought your military before, but they have never fought humans or anyone trained in human methods. What if you trained some of your soldiers in different fighting styles? Queen Veltar smiled. I have an even better idea. What if we recruited soldiers that the raiders would never expect? Over the next few weeks, Queen Veltar did something that shocked everyone. She began recruiting disabled Zephyrians for a new special forces unit, soldiers who had lost arms or legs in accidents, warriors who had been injured in previous battles, even civilians who had been born with physical differences. Jake helped design prosthetic limbs and assistive devices for all of them. Some got replacement arms like Veltar S, others got special leg braces that made them faster runners. A few got devices that enhanced their remaining senses. The new unit trained using human military tactics combined with Zephyrian technology. They learned to think creatively and adapt quickly. Most importantly, they learned to see their disabilities as advantages rather than weaknesses. When the raiders attacked the next colony, they expected to face the same predictable Zephyrian military they had defeated before. Instead, they found themselves fighting enemies who moved differently, thought differently, and fought with weapons and tactics they had never seen. The Special Forces unit won a complete victory. They rescued all the prisoners and captured several raider ships. For the first time in years, the Zephyrian military had achieved a decisive victory. News of the victory spread quickly throughout Zephyrian space. Suddenly, beings who had been considered worthless because of their disabilities were being hailed as heroes. The culture that had valued only physical perfection began to see the value of different perspectives. Queen Veltar established new laws that protected the rights of disabled citizens. She created programs to help them find meaningful work and participate fully in society. Most importantly, she changed the succession laws so that future rulers would be chosen based on their wisdom and leadership abilities, not their physical condition. Jake was offered a permanent position as an ambassador between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. He accepted gladly, knowing that he could help build a bridge between their two very different cultures. 1 year later, Jake stood on the balcony of the royal palace, watching Veltar address a crowd of citizens. She was wearing the crown jewels, and her forearms gleamed in the sunlight. The prosthetic arm that he had built in his cargo ship was now a symbol of hope for millions of people. You know, Veltar said, joining him on the balcony after her speech, when you bought me at that auction, I thought my life was over. And now? Jake asked. I think it was just beginning, she replied. Thank you for teaching me that being different is not the same as being broken. Jake smiled as he watched the crowd below. Former slaves worked alongside nobles. Disabled soldiers trained with veteran warriors. Humans and Zephyrians collaborated on new technologies. It had all started with one simple act of kindness in a dark auction house. Sometimes, Jake thought, the smallest gestures could change entire worlds.